Space, the final frontier. Well, okay, not really. All right, take two. Here in the Mitten State, welcome to Code 47, bringing you all things Star Trek, spanning the quadrants, the best thing since the neutral zone.
Back again, ladies, gentlemen, and associated alien species. This is the Code 47 podcast on the Secret Friends Unite podcasting network, episode number 72. I am Charlie Carden, competing with the dog on the other end of the line. If you're watching the video, you can see that there is some canine interference going on. But yes, I'm Charlie Carden, Trek Lord of West Michigan, captain of the USS Grand Petoskey, a chapter of Starfleet International. Here, as always, with my number 1.5, Katie Q, my co-host extraordinaire. Katie, good evening. How are you?
I am good, and I'm here with my own lieutenant, our chief of security, Minerva. That's the dog that's here if you're watching the video.
Well, if we ever do manage to snag you into service in the Grand Petoskey, there is a subunit of SFI called Pet Fleet, of which my pets are already members. And so something to keep in mind if you really want to press Minerva into service so she can get her stripes.
I think that Minerva would be a no-go for the stripes. If there is a race that could be emulated by high anxiety wanting to live alone in a cave, that would be in Minerva. Now, my other one, Amy, she would be my actual first lieutenant. You know, maybe emissary. Think like Counselor Troy type of deal, where she just wants to be in everybody's business, know exactly what's going on, and if you can pick her up and pet her and just carry her around for the rest of her life, she'll be thrilled.
Captain, I'm sensing that I want a steak, medium rare.
Yes, or I'm sensing that I need pets. I'm sensing that you have a lap that is not currently occupied, and you should have me in it.
Leco occupado. Well, we could just talk about pets all the live long day, but we have to attend.
We have a big episode.
we have a big episode, and it's categorized by that old R&B standard from the 70s. There's a thin line between love and hate. That's right. We are talking about the season finale of Star Trek Picard and the first 2 episodes of Star Trek Strange New Worlds. Oh my God, this is, and then we're going to talk about some Deep Space Nine, but as we discussed in pre-roll, it's more of a glazed donut-y situation. So we'll explain a little bit more as we go on. So Katie, without further ado, take us, engage into episode 10 of Picard. Yes.
With just hours until the Europa launch, Picard and the crew find themselves in a race against time to save the future. (Parentheses, season finale. And I would say season flop. What even was going on with this?
Flop or Rooney? You know, we've been saying it all along. This season just doesn't make sense. No. You know, as opposed to conflicting plot threads, you know, take a full, yard of yarn, 10 of them, and throw it in a garbage pail and go, blah, 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 and that was season 2 of Picard. That being said, there were some things in this episode that I felt brought it around to at least like, okay, there's some resolution here and blah, blah, blah. But on the other hand, you think of all the massive, like, why is Q dying? What's going on with Guinan? Why does Guinan now know Picard? Because it's not Guinan from the alternate universe. It's Guinan from the correct universe, so she does know him. Why was Jurati the Borg queen for 400 years, yet all of the other Borg stuff happened, but she's good, and now the Borg are part of the Federation?
Yes, exactly. And
so
it was one of those that didn't make any sense, and you had this weird resolution with the Data's daughter that's not Data's daughter.
Right, yeah, Corey. And your number one boyfriend.
Oh man! And I mean, okay. And I will say this: I love Will Wheaton. I got to see him when he did the first PAX East keynote speech.
Okay.
And it was great. It was, his whole thing was, hey, just don't be a dick. Like, everything I have seen about Will Wheaton is just, he seems like an absolutely wonderful individual. I just do not like Wesley. I don't.
Well, and it's funny to extend your point. While Will Wheaton, and again, I met him a month ago at Mission Chicago, and he was just signing off for the day. I was his last individual. He was wearing a mask. He was very fastidious about his mask. I even stood back. I said, I won't get too close to you. He said, thank you. I said, you're my 8 of 9 of the TNG cast. He said, who's the last one? I said, it's Dorney. I've met Michael Dorn. And he was very gracious, but literally as we turned away, he said to his handler, okay, let's get out of here. I mean, he was gracious till the end, and I appreciate that. I tend to think of the persona that he puts on not only in what we saw here, but then what we see in the Ready Room every week as Wesley Crusher, not Will Wheaton, because I just can't stand it. It's so shticky, and the
thing is, like, I don't know if you ever saw the Guilds. He played in the Guilds as kind of like the gamer bro, like intense World of Warcraft kind of guy. Okay. And he was not this over the top with it. Like, it was campy, but that entire series was campy, so it kind of worked. But I just do not understand, because even as Wesley, it didn't seem like he was this over the top, and everything about him is just so like. They're having him try so hard to get this to work. And I don't like, it just felt like a payoff no one was asking for.
Right.
And
True.
this entire thing with her and becoming one of like the time traveler people or whatever.
Right. Right. The Travelers, which goes back to the Traveler from early in TNG, which goes all the way back to Gary 7 and TOS, which goes all the way forward to Picard's weird romance with the Romulan woman, which we get at the end, who is actually also a human woman. But also
the weird thing of like Discovery's entire thing is time travel, and they have this entire thread of like, no, time travel is illegal now. Like, you cannot fuck around with it.
Right.
So like, where do the Travelers come in then? Because that seems like that's a whole huge plot thread.
I mean,
it's not now canon, or is fucking with the canon, because of the way that Discovery is portraying time travel and the way that it is like so carefully monitored in the future.
Right, because there was the Temporal Cold War, which again, that was part of Enterprise. Yes. There was the 29th century with the Captain Braxton guy, who was actor Bruce McGill, and then the guy who was Duquesne, who then the actor showed up in this season, but it wasn't the same character. It was just like, nothing about any of this works. And it's just... Yeah, it's the first thing from Star Trek, and and I've slogged through everything. I slogged through that horrible last season.
The whole original animated series. But
I've been through the last season.
You've been through it.
Yeah, TNG. I went through the first really bad 2 seasons of Enterprise. I've been through TAS, and I always try to find something that I could be like, oh, this is not a bad. This was just this failed on all cylinders. It was this was the wet fart in church of Star Trek.
Yes,
there we go. Found the episode name. Keep talking.
Yes, wet fart in church. Even the thing that I loved so much about the season, which was Girardi as the Queen. I just loved Girardi. I loved everything about her, like the way that she acted, her portrayal. Everything was great. They made her look so weird when it was finally released, because apparently they couldn't just do prosthetics. They had to do some sort of weird CG with the lighting, so it looked like her face was floating on a different body. And I'm like, just give her prosthetics. Just do makeup. Why do you have to do all this weird stuff?
It was like what they did with Chris Evans in the first Captain America movie. Yes. Pre-serum, he was this little skinny guy, but and at that time that 3D was real big in movies, so I didn't see it that way, but a friend said it, and they said in 3D it just his head just looks like it's floating. It looks like it looks like an SNL sketch. You know what I mean? So
you could see that it reminded me of the episode prior where you had Soong standing in a field behind a forest, and it was very clearly CG. Like the lighting was so far off. Or The Mandalorian, when Luke, they had that stand-in for Luke and they tried to CG his face.
Right.
Like, that's the kind of level of bad. And I was like, and we're getting to Strange New Worlds, which, as much as I hated this, loved Strange New Worlds, but I'm like, Star Trek is known for just doing weird, funky makeup and prosthetics. Just lean into that. You already have all of these prosthetics you were doing with the Borg Queen beforehand.
Right.
Why not just apply that to Girardi? Why are you doing all this weird shit with the lighting and with the CG?
But you have to funk it up and give her a trench coat and give her Dr. Octopus's tentacles, and she's wearing a Daft Punk helmet, and it's just like, it's very like, but she's good, and we want to be part of the Federation so we can help with this and that. It's just like,
well, and there was just so many, I felt like I was robbed of payouts because
Right.
I love Q, and I know so many people do. And the actor who plays him, like, he could read the fucking phone book.
Oh yeah.
And it would probably bring me to tears. Like, he just knows how to deliver a line, and there were so many beautiful lines that he was delivering and beautiful moments between him and Picard that just felt robbed because he was a side plot.
Right.
Like,
but everything was a side plot in this. There was,
I don't know
all
what
of it
really was the full plot, because you
Right.
had the first 2 episodes, which were amazing, and then you had this last episode that ended up being kind of the MacGuffin of
right.
pulling together the first 2 episodes, but everything in between didn't feel like it made any sense or had any reason, because it's like, okay, why did Q bring Picard back to the past if Jurati had already become a Borg queen, because he had met Jurati? So, like, it was already part of Picard's timeline, and it wasn't an alternate time. And this is the problem with time travel.
Right. Oh my God. So yeah, you can write it off as much as, it's timey-wimey, Doctor Who, whatever it is, but
at least Doctor Who said it's timey-wimey. Like, it just doesn't make sense.
Right. But this just tried to pull it all back together. And we're back in the present. And everything's good.
Yeah,
and yada,
and
yada.
It doesn't make any sense.
So anyway, to close the door, obviously on Picard season 2, we're going to have to write it off in some fashion or another and kind of put all our eggs in the basket of the big adios that we're getting. I'm going to assume this time next year with season 3, the return of all of the actors, if not all the characters. Obviously, we're not going to get Data back because Brent Spiner has come right out and said, "I'm not playing Data anymore." But he will be assumed of some variety. Maybe he'll be, Uber, maybe he'll be the villain. He'll be the Uber soon.
Apparently, they just want to really
Yeah, exactly.
Doing a name, I don't know why.
It'll be nothing but Sung Android. So yeah, let's just call this one. We'll call this an audible. It's
I want to throw out, because this is what I'm hoping that this whole thing led up to, is that the season 3, the power or the villain or the enemy that they were talking about having to come together to fight. I'm hoping that they're bringing it back to season 1 and having it be those synthetics that they kind of cut off from coming through that big wormhole at the end of season 1 that were planning on destroying all organics.
Yes,
I'm hoping that season 3 is, no, you can see organics and synthetics living together. Literally, Jurati is the human exemplification, human Borg exemplification of that.
Right.
And then it's them trying to get through that synthetics. Now, that would be a much more cohesive storyline than they have done in season 1 or 2.
Oh my God. You're right. It's gonna be odd seasons. I just anyway. Best to move on again to shift gears. Star Trek is about positivity. It's about looking at the light side. We got a 1-2 punch. So the same day that Picard gave us, the big wet fart, we got episode 1 of Strange New Worlds, oddly titled "A Strange New Worlds." When one of Pike's officers goes missing, who could it be? While on a secret mission for Starfleet, Pike has to come out of self-imposed exile. He must navigate how to rescue his officer while struggling to do with the vision of the future he's been given. Series premiere. Damn, it all works and it's so great. No, it's awesome. Yes. I love this. I've had this, in some of the fanfic that I've written. I always like the,
Wait, did you just admit that you write fanfic? I just want to make sure we're clarifying that.
Since I was 17, absolutely, I have.
That's all right. I have my own rendition of some Batman fanfics. So.
Oh my gosh, a lot of mine has been, original, kind of within the universe, but it's most all of it. But yes, regardless. I love the fanfic trope, as it were, of the, disenfranchised Starfleet officer. I just can't go back because I'm raggly beard, or I'm going hiking in the mountains, or in this case, riding a horse in the snow through.
Right, riding across Montana.
Yeah, riding across Montana with wind farms, which Trump says will give us cancer. Oh, did I just say that? All right, don't listen to that. That part.
Bad influence on you.
Oh my God. I'm sorry. Oh God. Okay. Anyway, like I said, nobody who actually likes Star Trek and listens to us is a Trumper. I'm just gonna
if they're listening to us, I have a neon green mohawk. They left long ago when I came on.
long ago. But regardless, this was great. So we do get my favorite meme about this. We get to see Robert April, the predecessor to Pike, as captain of the Enterprise, as established by TAS. My favorite meme about this was, oh man, Star Trek has given up on continuity. Robert April can't look like this guy. He's got to look like a Scooby-Doo cartoon. And they show him side by side as a generic Filmation guy. But yeah, no, they picked a great actor. I love it. They changed his race. That's awesome. I love it. That's what Star Trek's all about. So yeah, you're right. I have long maintained since Discovery began, and we saw, like, how could these sets be, or even since Enterprise began, even though there was an episode of Enterprise where they did rebuild TOS sets for an episode that took place, that the updating of the Enterprise look, which is amazing, the updating of the Discovery look prior to that, is simply that. You cannot just have a show where, hey, we've got these cardboard sets from 1965. Don't you think they look great? No, they look horrible. Nobody's going to buy it. It's going to be a distraction from the show.
Right. Yeah.
So your imagination simply has to fill in the gap between these shows and when Star Trek started to not look chintzy, starting in Star Trek The Motion Picture, when they actually built my favorite ship, the Constitution-class refit, with all those beautiful sets and everything that they did. That's what my brain does. That's my headcanon. My headcanon said, you know what? I will just imagine Kirk's head in this uniform a few years from now, and all the sets look the same. Which actually
looks great.
Which actually, with something that we reported with actor Paul Wesley showing up as a younger James T. Kirk, although we do get his brother Sam, which is canonical to TOS, that actually did show up in an episode of TOS. I know that's not your area, but obviously you know. that we do see Paul Wesley, and then in that same photo montage, they also showed Celia Rose Gooding, who I got to meet and is a wonderful person, who is Cadet Uhura in this, in lieutenant stripes and the officer's uniform, in what we're assuming is probably a flashback sequence of some kind within that same setting. So yes, my brain has now decided that old gross TOS settings don't exist. You know what? Hit me up at Twitter at the C3 or at Secret Friends U. Tell me I'm wrong, but I just watching TOS and particularly, hey, look at these sets. Oh, we're shaking. Oh, the cardboard's tilting. You know what I mean? I appreciate that. I appreciate in this episode. So yeah, they stumble upon a society that was unduly influenced by the events of the finale of Discovery season 2, the big space battle. They rebuilt half of a warp engine, but they're building it as a weapon. They're at kind of a crisis point. Name of a Lower Decks episode. Where they could use this, not for warp drive, but to blow each other up. So that awesome montage, where Pike's standing there and he's giving them a history lesson that pulls together everything that, where we living in the Star Trek world is going to happen in the next 40, 30 years, where everything that's going on right now builds to such a crisis, a second civil war, which turns into a third world war, which results in the eradication of 30% of the Earth's population.
Yep.
I mean, that is not something that I have a hard time believing, and it's terrifying because look at the things that are happening in the news this week, and we don't need to talk about it, but they're all pretty much horrifying. School shootings, trying to overturn Roe versus Wade. I don't even want to talk about it. It's horrifying. So this message is needed now more than ever. I can't think of an episode that has, especially a premiere episode, that has ever knocked it more out of the park than this one did. Oh my God. They nailed everything. They gave the message, the Star Trek message, the, hope and togetherness and infinite diversity and infinite accommodations is what's going to save us. And you say something. I can't anymore.
Well, and it's like they had a checklist of what makes Star Trek, what makes good Star Trek. And they went, okay, moral quandaries, the struggle of the moral gray areas, the monster of the week, the continuation of, humanity through crisis and then rising above it, because you get every one of those things in this episode. And it's one of the things that you and I have talked about when they had said, this is going to be more of a monster of the week, kind of a weekly go by. And I was like, I don't know how I feel about that, because I like the continuality. I like the fact that the characters are influenced by what has happened before, because it shows growth. It shows movement instead of it just being, the Geordi joke of there's never been a transporter accident within the last 30 years. And you're like, literally two seasons or 2 episodes ago, you were freaking stuck in a wall, Geordi. Don't lie to me.
Knock it off.
Right. So I'm like, I wanted to find a happy medium, and they hit it so perfectly. And so Pike is so phenomenal. Just he's got such charisma on the screen, and his little one-offs, like I feel like he's got like the sass of Riker mixed with Cisco, where he's got like just the commandment of like he commands a room like Cisco did. But like at one point, I think it's in the second episode where they're talking about like the comet hitting the Earth, and he goes, well, that's not good. Obviously.
I don't like that.
He's got these little he's got these little quips, and it's like that very kind of obvious, almost like witty dad humor to him, which is great. But there's also a lot of heart to him as he's struggling with what happened in Discovery.
Right. And
that was bringing that through line.
Right. And that was such a great capper through the 2 episodes, ending obviously with the end of the second episode. Not that we want to jump ahead, but just checked all the boxes. But speaking of the second episode, this one's all yours, so you go for it.
Oh, yes. Okay, so while on a survey mission, the USS Enterprise discovers a comet is going to strike an inhabited planet. They try to reroute the comet, only to find that an ancient alien relic buried on the comet's icy surface is somehow stopping them. As the away team tries to unlock the relic's secrets, Pike and Number One deal with a group of zealots who want to prevent the USS Enterprise from interfering.
Oh, man. Ooh, episode is Children of the Comet is the name of the episode.
Yes. Oh, yes. I got excited.
I know. Well, I understand. And this was an episode, it was a very, very Uhura-centric episode. So you're taking young... Yeah, you're taking your youngest character, and only took 60 years, but she finally gets a friggin' backstory.
My question, because it seems like Uhura and Spock are kind of hitting it off a little bit. So, are we getting the alternate universe version of this? Is this the movie back of Spock and Uhura having a romance versus the TOS universe?
I mean, I don't necessarily think so, simply because, and again, in the first episode, one thing we didn't touch on is that Spock is getting hot and heavy with T'Pring, who is his betrothed. They're out on a date, which is not really a thing that Vulcans do. To a certain
extent.
Yeah, but I mean,
like, also hits cold water as soon as he's pulled away, and she's like, excuse me, no, you get to pick between me or Starfleet, not both. So I think that relationship's going to last.
Well, I mean, there's an entire TOS episode about this, where we learn about the Pon Farms episode 1 of season 2. And it's the famous The Amok Time. Do 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 do. You recognize the piece of music? Go watch it. Nope. I know. You're like, no, I won't. I will not. No, I'm not watching TOS.
Especially after seeing Strange New Worlds, you think I'm going to be able to handle going back to that cheesy stuff?
Touche.
Like, you just were saying that there were cardboard sets. I'm sorry. I know that it holds a special place in your heart, and I love the nostalgia that you have.
Not really. I
cannot do that to myself. I can't.
I am a TNG guy at my heart. TOS for me, it's the movies, and with the movies, it's because I love the look of it. TOS, I can't stand the look of TOS. It drives me nuts. I know that is
Nimoy, but
I know. Right. But regardless, no. And there was a whole episode of TOS where we learned about the Vulcan mating rituals. They only mate once every 7 years, and so it looked like that was about to happen in that first episode. It didn't happen, but then, as it turns out, as T'Pring stays on Vulcan, she ends up catching the eye of another dude, and the whole setup to that TOS episode is she was trying to get Spock killed off so she could hook up with this other guy. She's a real bitch. So yes, I do not feel bad for her.
No, I'm not saying that I do, but that's what I'm wondering, is that if that's going to be called off and we're going to have the Spock.
I mean, it didn't. It didn't end up happening in TOS. Now, there was an ongoing, unresolved romantic vibe between Nurse Chapel, who is a great new character in this, and Spock throughout the original series. What's funny is that Nurse Chapel was played by Majel Barrett Roddenberry, who was also number 1 in the unaired pilot. So you have two characters played by the same actress now in this show, played by different actresses, which I adore.
Well. It seems that's what I'm curious, is because I feel like they're kind of leaving this open, because depending on how it goes, if they don't want Pike to end up like he did in the OGTOS seasons. Like it seems like they're kind of leaving it open to where if something changes, then they can be like, no, this is actually a different universe.
I just don't know that we're going to go that route, but anything's possible.
I don't know. That's what I'm saying. But I was like, I'm getting a Horace Spock vibe. So
I mean, you know,
sure.
And again, you're right. In the JJ verse, they lean very heavily into that. But I don't know. It could simply be that they're going to be great pals. He's going to have this. He's going to have this great big flirtation with Nurse Chapel that goes nowhere.
Who is also fantastic. Entire cast and all of the actors, amazing.
Yeah, great new actors. We have Lan Noonien Singh is the name of the character, related to Khan Noonien Singh, that was pointed out in the pre-roll stuff. Lieutenant Ortegas is great. She's like a gal you want to go drinking with. She's so awesome. The helms person, helmswoman,
yes.
helm officer. And then Dr. Mbenga, who is again he's a transplant from TOS. And then you have a new character in Lieutenant. He's an Enar, which is a shoot off of the Andorian, and Lieutenant Commander Hemmer. Great cast, great tee up. But Hemmer is when he beamed in at the last second of episode 1, and then you got a little bit of him in this episode too. But yeah, I love this, and I love that this episode concluded again. You know, the pseudo-religious stuff with the fact that, you know, our sentient comet can't, you know, you can't touch it or whatever, it's going to do whatever it wants to do or something. Or
and even the fact that they were like, you can't touch it, and so Pike specifically comes up with a way for them to break off a chunk of the comet, and he goes, we're technically not touching it. That sass that's coming through. He's like, we're doing this thing, and technically we're not touching it. So it's fine.
Stop hitting yourself. Stop hitting yourself. Yes. Stop hitting yourself.
Yes. Very much that energy.
It's just
the one thing that bugged me is because they're on this, like, the inhabited planet that's, you know, got pre-warp civilization. It's an arid planet. It is a desert, like kind of a Tatooine type of deal.
Right. The planet that they're trying to save the comet from.
Yes. Yeah. And they talk about how now they have changed basically their entire ecosystem to be more have more water to it. And my entire thing is, I'm like, if this entire like culture and like the entire ecosystem evolved to not have water, that would probably be a huge detriment to them, because they're talking about like, well, now it's got more water, so they can have like higher culture, and they'll be able to like agriculture, like have more agriculture and all this stuff. And I'm like, okay, think about how we're trying to do with just having like the ice caps melting on our planet. Like we were not made to have this much water, and so we're really struggling with it. They show out and they're, you know, it's got them like dancing in the rain. I'm like, have they ever seen rain? If they've never seen rain, that would freak me out.
They'd be like, I'm afraid of the sky now. Yeah, you're right.
Exactly. I'm like, I don't think that they would have like evolved to need water if that water wasn't available to them. So it was one of those where it just felt kind of like Earth centric as far as how that civilization was being portrayed. But I mean, it's Star Trek, and so that was like a nitpicky thing where I was just like, that seems kind of weird.
But that's okay. Star Trekky life is about the nitpickery. So you're you get the Royal Hall pass on that one. All right. Well, more to come in our next episode, which will actually be Katie's little departure until the fall.
It will be. I promise I'm still going to watch Strange New Worlds, though. Okay. I will watch the entire season, and I will yell at you in Messenger as much as I do now.
so much yelling.
Hopefully it will have a better kind of run through than Picard did, because remember the first 2 episodes of Picard were chef's beautiful, and then everything went downhill from there. So the rest of it was
Ratatouille. Yeah.
Oh, it was so bad.
My goodness.
I have high hopes for Strange New Worlds.
I do too. So hopefully by the time you come back, we'll be into Lower Decks or something like that. Which I know is your sweet spot. So that's good.
I'm so excited to be able to go through Lower Decks for the first time with you.
Oh, I know it's
so good.
It's gonna be fun now that I'm a B believer of it before, much more than I was for. All right, let's dig in to the recap. We are still in Deep Space Nine Season 2, Part 3. We had a bigger chunk of episodes here because we had a longer season than we did obviously in Season 1, which was like a 3/4 season. This was a whole season. So we're starting out with Episode 13, which is Armageddon Game. Winrich Colby, a series veteran, was the director. Morgan Gendel was the writer. Never heard of him. Aired in January of 1994. O'Brien and Bashir helped 2 warring races, the Kelleran and the Talani, erase knowledge of a deadly biological weapon but are not to be trusted to keep what they have as a secret. Ouch. That's a toughie. The nature of it is, again, you're dealing with alien races. You don't necessarily know what you're going to get. It seems kind of dumb that the two of these guys didn't have a security contingent of any kind, because they're on the space station helping this non-aligned species. They're on a humanitarian mission. They're getting rid of this deadly virus. But at the end of it, the non-aligned species, who are now finally at peace, say, well, you know what? These guys know how to recreate it, so everybody here's got to die. So O'Brien and Bashir, kind of escape by the hair of their chinny chin chin. And it's a nice episode. And in escaping, unfortunately, a vial explodes and the virus, a drop of it lands on O'Brien, so he gets really sick. But throughout them, being in this hidey hole on the planet, they start to, develop new corners to their friendship. Dr. Bashir talks about this long lost romance. The chief talks about, the adventures of being married and this thing and that thing. And in the end of it, the cavalry shows up to rescue him. But I really like, and it was O'Brien's wife says, my husband doesn't drink coffee at 3:00 in the afternoon.
Yeah, and it shows that she's actually showing, and which I loved. And then, like, the fact that they undercut that as a joke at the end of the episode was like, oh, come on, guys, that was really sweet. And I feel like it kind of undercut O'Brien's entire, like, thing of, like, being married is its own adventure, and there's it's kind of its own final frontier. So but
it's
overall,
its own final frontier where your wife doesn't know how much you love your coffee.
Yes.
But I love this next episode too. But I'll let you take this one.
Oh yes, okay. Or we're just gonna go into Whispers. Okay, yeah, sure. Okay, so Whispers, by Les Landau and written by Paul Robert Coyle. I don't know if you know him.
Nope.
It aired February 6th of 1994. While preparing the station for an upcoming peace talks, O'Brien discovers that the crew has been hiding information from him and giving orders behind his back. O'Brien begins to suspect everyone on the station is gradually being altered or replaced by an unknown force. And I both loved and hated this episode because O'Brien seems like kind of an a-hole the entire time.
Totally.
Because he just starts off being a super dick to his wife. And I'm like, why? Why are you being mean?
He's picking fights with his subordinate, and then he's being all grumpy. And I thought this episode, and again, I watched this was my senior year in high school, so I was really, really engaged. And I was an adult, so I was watching. I wasn't like, what the hell's going on? Semi-intelligent, nearly 18-year-old guy who was a huge Star Trek nerd. And, girls wouldn't touch him with a 10-foot pole. But, so I was really into Star Trek.
And now you're on a podcast with me, so obviously, who's laughing now?
I was going to say the journey has come all the way around. But I spent the whole episode feeling bad for him because you're right, I didn't quite get the twist. I'm like, why is everybody conspiring against him? What's the deal? It was. I certainly didn't figure out the twist at the end. I don't know about you. The first time you saw it, I wasn't like, oh, that's not really him. I thought maybe he was in a bottle universe or alternate universe, or he was hallucinating, or it was a dream or something. So I didn't get it. So it was like a super cool, gotcha at the end, I thought.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's kind of the difference of me watching it, kind of knowing some of the tropes that Star Trek has gone through and that sci-fi goes through in general, because it's kind of the Occam's razor thing of, like, the simplest explanation. So I'm like, okay, well, rather than having the entire crew replaced, he probably was replaced. And it was one of those things of, like, I wish that they would have been able to go into more of, like, okay, well, who's human then? Like, kind of like the William Riker or the when in Voyager, when what's their faces, they get together and they make the whole new creature.
Oh, Tuvix.
Tuvix, yes. Thank you. I'm like, I cannot remember any of their names at that point.
You remember the silver Jello people that make a whole new crew, and they have that. By the end of it, you're like, oh, there's little differences in it, and you can tell it's not really them, but they finally figure out who they are.
Yeah.
It was just like the whole while it's like, oh, why are they all dying or whatever? So, or why aren't things going right? So
Yeah, I would have liked to see a little bit more of that conversation, because I think he just basically, like, the clone of him just kind of dies where it's they're just like kind of the panic and like the realization of like, I guess he dies via existential crisis.
Right. It's so like Padme in Star Wars. She died because she was sad. She has lost the will to live. What? Yeah.
And it just kind of like neatly wrapped itself up in a bow where I was like, I'd like to have seen it get a little bit more messy. But overall, I did think, like, again, it was those episodes that are digging more into the side characters where, you know, you had TNG in the episodes before or the series before where it was mostly focused on the main, like, you know, captain and number one, where these ones you're getting, you know, entire episodes where like Cisco doesn't really exist in them. And I think those are really great.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and that's what ends up making DS9 the classic that it was because of its exploration of its. I mean, and again, O'Brien is main cast, but even as you go on, you're getting, you know, Garrick and you go to Cod and, you know, the political intrigue and religious intrigue on Bajor, and that's all you know, Ron D. Moore, which, you know, bled into really Battlestar Galactica. It's really the same thing. But I don't want to get too far off track because we'll talk about an episode where I know I wanted to bitch slap the villain's character in this time and again.
Love to hate.
This is episode 15, Paradise, directed by Corey Allen, again a regular of the series. Story by Jim Trombetta and James Crocker. Nope. Teleplay Jeff King, Richard Manning, and Hans Beimler, who was a regular of the series. February of 1994, Cisco and O'Brien are stranded on a planet Aurelius, where their leader, Alexis, rejects technology even if it means the death of others. Oh, there's a word I want to use that I'm not going to use for what I thought about this woman.
Yes, but I appreciate that. No gendered slurs.
No gendered slurs. But yes, she's a dickwad. There you go. There's a genderless slur for you. But no, what happens? Yeah, Cisco and O'Brien are out looking for colony sites. Blah blah blah. Which seems like a weird mission to be doing in a runabout from a space station. But whatever.
Well, also having the captain and your chief of engineering.
Yeah. So it's kind of a weird. You'd think it would be, you know, a bunch of, you know, science ensigns or whatever, and if they get lost, they don't come back. Well, you know, we got more of those. Not a big deal. But
that's
anyway,
what for. Like,
yes, exactly.
That's a Tendi mission there.
This is a lower deck scenario. It's a lower decks away mission. But yeah, so Cisco and O'Brien bump into this site where, you know, there was a crashed, you know, shuttlecraft, you know, several years prior. All the people have kind of gone granola because none of the technology works. They're all living off the land and blacksmithing, and their leader is this basically Luddite, technophobe woman who immediately finds out that one of their people ate a plant or something, and you know, God, if we get to the runabout, we get a hypospray and give her a shot, she'd be good to go, and she dies. And this woman is like, well, that was the will of the this and that because of the way we lived, and if we had been looking for technology, we all would have died. So I guess it's kind of cool that she's dead or whatever. And then she starts leaning on Cisco and O'Brien to participate in their lifestyle. And they're like, we want to get the fuck out of here. This place sucks. You guys should all come with us. So eventually, the long and short of it,
it's found out that she's the one who's been basically making it so that no technology works.
Right, exactly.
And she also sent away the runabout. So they were not ever going to get saved.
Right, exactly. So basically, but, you know, Kira and Dax find it out. They come and rescue them. And at the end of it, you know, the people choose to stay, knowing that they have the freedom to turn off the technology inhibiting field. But fortunately, the bitch gets taken away, which is fine by me. So, you know, and you know, to answer for the death of all the people that the people that she willingly stranded, which is kind of a big deal.
Absolutely.
So I love that, and again, it's a reflection on modern technology or modern society. You have people who really shun technology, but you know, the question is, if it could be done to this length, there's always going to be people that are gonna be, you know, basically it's this side of being a religious zealot, which is, you know, that's a hot button with me. Nothing I ever like to talk about. But it's same kind of thing.
Yeah, it does play into more of they're using the modern technology as a way to show kind of the freedom of choice and how everyone should have that freedom of choice regardless of, you know, what it's about. So, and this means it's the technology. I will say that one thing that really, again, love about DS9, and I feel like we're getting it more and more as we're going in, is that you had an entire side quest of Dax and Kira trying to find Cisco and O'Brien all on their own. And it's one of those things where with TNG, there were not two main casts that were women that could go off on their own and have an entire, thing where like Dax is basically slingshotting themselves at warp trying to get the other runabout via like and capture it at warp with a tractor beam.
Right.
And it's showing the versatility of the cast. And again, I'm going to just keep talking about this as we're going through DS9 because it's one of the reasons I love DS9 so much is because there's such a versatility in the cast. All of them are shown as competent. All of them are shown as very creative and ingenuitive. And
Right.
I enjoyed watching Dax and Kira as much trying to solve their problems as I did watching, O'Brien and Cisco stand up to this just hellion of a woman who is
Right.
imposing her will on this group of people.
Exactly. Oh my goodness! And there's another Great Dax episode
Yes.
beyond,
Speaking of
but we are sandwiched in a very generic. Now, not only is this a very generic storyline, but it's also one that was exactly copied in an episode of Enterprise, and the guest star in that episode of Enterprise was Rene Auberjonois, Odo, who leads this episode.
I did not realize that. And now
Yeah.
I wonder if that's going to color, because I really liked this episode.
Oh, okay.
But I didn't know that it was kind of a cut and paste from a different episode.
It was. Well, it became, because obviously Enterprise was almost
Right.
10 years later. But yeah, it was, I just found this to be a super generic, like, oh, we shot in a field for a couple of days and otherwise we had a set and we had a very generic, it was the flip side of the previous episode of we had no technology problems. This one is entirely a technology problem. It did drop a little hint to, the main guy, what he did is, I escaped my home world because the Dominion was destroying it. So now this is the fourth or fifth reference to the unknown Dominion, which we're going to very, very shortly, we're going to find out exactly who they are in just a few episodes from now. But the guy said, I escaped and I built this big hologram and gave me a village, and then I had a wife, and then I had a child who was a hologram, and then I have a hologram grandchild. It was just like, you know what? I'm going to stop my bitch. What did you like about it? Please tell me.
And I think that, again, it plays back to the uniqueness of them building out each character, because having Cisco or O'Brien at that scene and going through this ordeal might have been different than having Dax and specifically Odo, because you have Odo who is pretty much in a constant existential crisis because he has no permanent form, no permanent history, no permanent home. And he's seeing these holograms that are like, no, we're real. What is the difference between their reality, because they are not sentient in the kind of traditional sense, versus, the way that he is sentient in some ways. And then you have Dax, who has her own kind of, understanding as far as I see that we have more pets.
There we go.
There
you go.
But yeah, she has her own kind of like fluid understanding of self and physical permanence. So I think that having those two be the ones that were on the home planet really gave it kind of its own unique twist as far as the conversation went. Yeah. Or as far as like even like the underlying themes of it go.
I can't disagree. I like that perspective. But segueing into the next episode, dealing with Dax. This sets up something that I think really pays off about Dax, about Jadzia and Curzon Dax, that we find out next season. So go ahead, please.
Yes. Okay, so we have Playing God as the title of the episode. It's directed by David Livingston, story by Jim Trombetta, and teleplay by Jim Trombetta and Michael Pillar. Aired February 27th, 1944.
1944. Oh my god.
1994. I said it and I was like, wait, that didn't sound right.
It was a flashback you never knew about.
Yes. So Dax is supervising Arjun, the Trill candidate for joining, and she helps him find his voice and discover what he wants from life and from joining. Meanwhile, the proto-universe threatens to destroy the station and Bajor. So again, I thought it was some really fun kind of through lines from the previous episode, and it's one of those things where we started out the season and we had 3 episodes that were written by 3 different people and had very beautiful through lines.
Right.
This one you had kind of those similar themes of like, who gets to decide who lives and who dies, who gets to decide what existence is and how humanity plays itself out, or how these existences are playing itself out with this kind of like little proto universe, and Cisco ends up taking it off the station.
Right.
And at the same time, you have Dax and Arjun where, she's being kind of a hard ass with him. And she's like, you don't have a lot of personality. And she's trying to explain to him, like this I was not the same person I was that you see now. And you need to understand what happened with me so that you can know what you're going to get into as the journey. Because it felt kind of like it was talking about the romanticism that humanity has with marriage, where they're like, no, if you just get married, everything works out. Like,
right. Oh, and I'll have some kids and that'll work. Then I'll figure out what I want to do with my life.
Everything will be fine. Like, all of the problems will be sides once you get married. And it's like, no, if this relationship is toxic, it's toxic. If you're not fully ready to know how you're going to go into that, it's not going to work regardless.
Right. They really illustrate that the Trill joining. And again, we have a long gap in anything Trill related after DS9. Then we're getting a little bit back in Discovery, and they're taking a different bent to it, obviously, because now you have, you separated a Trill consciousness and put it into a golem, which is interesting. Mm-hmm. What we are really going to see when you and I, and it's going to be when we come back around and do Deep Space Nine Season 3, which is going to be a year from now, maybe longer, is that there's a great episode where you learn a little bit more about why Curzon fought so hard to kick Jadzia out of the program. We don't want to spoil anything, but this episode laid the groundwork for that. Mm-hmm. Now the B story with the proto universe, whatever, it's very DS9 Season 1, 2, where you're like, there's a thing on the station and blah blah. So I just don't care. But yeah, you're right. The Argent what's very interesting is this was in the spring, early part of 94. In the summer of 94, one of the greatest films of all time, in my opinion, Forrest Gump, came out. The actor who played Arjun was the hippie who smacked Jenny around at the when they were at the March on Washington. Forrest jumps over tables, beating the shit out of him. Same guy. Same guy. I'm like, I watched it. I'm like, that's Arjun.
Your through lines to stuff are very interesting with the way that they work.
I've been married to April for 9 years, and she's like, I know I can watch an episode of anything, and there's somebody in Star Trek that's in it.
And you will know exactly how they relate to everything else.
You better believe it. It's my magical superpower. All right, let's move on to, speaking of doing, and this was again, we had a great episode with Quark a little while back, but this one was spectacular. We actually get as a guest star Mary Crosby, the sister of Denise Crosby, who was Tasha Yar in TNG. There we go. And she was also on Dallas, so that's an even better one. Episode 18 of the season is Profit and Loss, directed by Robert Weimer, written by Flip Kobler and Cindy Marcus. Nope. March 20 of 1994 was the week that this aired. Quark is reunited with his former Cardassian lover, Natima Lang, but she's engaged in dangerous political intrigue with their students, Raquelin and Hogue. They want to reduce political power of the Cardassian military. Now, this is a great episode on definitely two fronts. A, you're getting this absolute, in my opinion, this absolute dichotomy of Quark's character. Oh, I love money. That's all I care about. Profit of the bar, this thing and that thing. And then, the one that got away. This woman comes back to his life. He's not seen her for 6 or 7 years, and it's all he cares about. And I will tell you, and I don't need to tell you, you're a human being with feelings and emotions. You know what love can do. Yeah. That you just like drop everything and in a rekindling of an older romance. I mean, I won't say everybody's been there, but I've certainly been there in my life. It can be a powerful thing. So that's that's great, and I think it's handled really well. And in the end, obviously, they have to go their separate ways, which is typical of TV show format, regardless. Can't make big changes like that. But the laying out, having Garrick involved is always amazing. Andy Robinson is Garrick, my guy. And we get a couple of really great upcoming episodes with him that define his character a little bit better in his past with the Obsidian Order and being a spy and stuff. So this gives a lot of hint around his past and how he's disgraced and how he's exiled and he can't leave DS9 or he'll get killed, blah, blah.
And he literally says, because I didn't catch it the first time around, it's probably because I didn't realize I didn't know what his character's backstory was. But Bashir asks him, he's like, "Are you a spy or are you an outcast?" And Garrick flat out says, "Well, why not both?" And Bashir's like, "That doesn't make any sense." And I'm like, he literally just told you.
Use your ears, bro. Nope. Rejected. But yeah, there's a through line that goes from Garrick to the Obsidian Order, and then you meet, his mentor in Tain a few episodes from now, and then that leads into, the Obsidian Order's attack on the Dominion, which happens in the following season, and then the collapse of the Cardassian military in season 4 with the Klingons, and it's just so this just hints upon, and I love it's just a few episodes before everything starts with the Dominion, and the Dominion takes 2 full seasons. It takes seasons 3 and 4 and 5 to finally come to fruition. Everything is just such a slow burn in this show, which makes nearly the entirety of it. You can kind of skip season 1, but starting with season 2, I mean, there are some can't miss threads, and this episode is a great example of that, I think.
Yeah, and it really shows how they're using Quark to, first off, flesh out the history of the station, and then also flesh out, Quark himself, because, his character is kind of hit and miss for me, because sometimes he just gives off like major creepy vibes. I end up in his court by the end of the season, or by the end of the series.
True. Yeah,
where,
and even by the end of an episode, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He can something like in that early episode where there was, he let all the bad guys on the station.
Yes.
But at the end of it, he helped,
Yes.
get them thrown off, and they were like, "It's cool, you can stay, whatever."
But I thought this one, it really helped. I'll just be praising DS9. They do a really great job of showing kind of they balance the political dynamicism with the character dynamicism really, really well, of like building out each one without one overshadowing the other, because you got a really great history with Quark, and you got to see some of his humanity, especially with, on our last set where you had the other Ferengi gal who was pretending to be a man so that she could... Pell, yeah. So you get to see that, like he's had this kind of full, rich life, and it works really well to kind of see, like, it's very, very drama-oriented, like how they show romances with this stuff, like in the late 90s, like everyone, like they're like leaning against each other and like, oh, Quark. And I'm like, okay, calm down. Just calm down. Goodness. Like, I feel like I'm watching Casablanca here.
Yeah, knock it off. Or Dallas.
Yes. Yeah,
in this case, which works with Mary Crosby. So I like it. I believe the character of Natima Lang showed up in a novel later on or something else, which is not canonical, but whatever. We're already talking about fanfic. You've got yours. I've got mine. We're good. You take the good, you take the bad.
Yes.
All right. Let's end this on a biggity bang bang, because this last episode was hot stuff. All right. Your turn.
Yes.
Take it away.
Blood Oath, directed by Rainrich Colby, written by Peter Allen Fields, and it aired in March 27th of 1994. Jexia Dax honors an oath made by Curzon Dax to 3 Klingons, Kor, Koloth, and Kang, and goes with them on a crusade against their sworn enemy, the Albino, who murdered their firstborn children as a revenge for stopping his raid on the Klingon colony. And again,
my God, it's so good!
This whole set was just so much Dax, and I loved every second of it.
Right, I know it was dynamic, and let it be known. And again, I know TOS is not your jam. Kor, Koloth, and Kang are the original 3 Klingon characters.
Oh, that's good to know.
Yeah, exactly. So and again, obviously, without knowing that, it lessens a bit, but not too much.
I don't think
of really understanding who they are, because you realize that obviously Curzon Dax was a young man, 75, 80, 90 years prior to this. And you thought, well, Klingons are very long lived. And I guess it makes, so it's okay to, it kind of makes, Triller obviously long lived. So obviously they all knew each other as younger, but no, Kor, very first Klingon, showed up in the season 1 episode. Koloth was the Klingon in the classic Trouble with Tribbles episode. Okay, and then Kang showed up in a very kind of a forgettable season 3 episode. All of season 3 of TOS was horrible. I am not looking forward to doing that when Peter and I do that, because it's going to be like Picard season 2 for like 2 months. Yeah, it's like not it. That's a very much a not it. But these 3 characters were great, and the storyline was amazing. Jadzia Dax, even she tried to confide in Kira, what's it like to kill people? This, does it stick with you? And she says, every life that you take, Kira says to her, every life I took was a piece of my own life. And, Cisco calls her down and says, this is not a Starfleet thing to do. And, you're not Klingon. And this just comes up when she and Worf get together in, seasons 4 and 5. She tries to jump on his train. Like, when Worf's brother comes to the season, he's like, I want you to kill me. And Worf tries to do it. and is interrupted, and then both he and Jadzia are like, but it's a Klingon thing, whatever. And Sisko says, this is not a Klingon station, and those are not Klingon uniforms you're wearing, so knock it off.
Mm-hmm.
But she manages to slide through with this one. And I love the albino. That motherfucker was vicious.
He was, yeah.
And I couldn't really figure out. I don't think I don't know what species he was. He kind of looked like he might have sort of been a Klingon, but
I think he was a Klingon.
Wasn't?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think the idea was that he was a Klingon. It's just he was an albino Klingon.
Right.
So apparently albinoism is a thing that also can happen with Klingons. I
guess, but he was a super duper badass. But he was also a huge coward because he had been hiding for 25 years at this compound. They finally. So yeah, at the end of it, Koloth and Kang, they do not survive the final battle. Kor lives, and then Kor makes 2 or 3 more appearances later in the series, where he and Worf become friends / enemies or whatever. And in the end,
if you will.
Yeah, frenemies, exactly. And in the end, Jadzia doesn't kind of have the bloodlust to finally kill him. Though I think Kang finally delivers the death blow or whatever. Yeah. So, and then she, in typical TV show fashion, she goes back and there's no consequences. So that's cool. That's, she took a couple days off to do this thing, but,
go on a murder spree.
Wonderful. Yeah, exactly. Wonderful exploration, obviously ongoing of Jadzia's character, but then also of Klingon culture, which becomes such, Peter Allen Fields is a writer who continues on in the series, but it's really when Ron D. Moore really kicks it in the teeth when he takes over, when Worf joins the series in season 4. It's when we ended up seeing Kang again, and then we end up seeing him in the final season 2. That we really are starting to learn that much more about Klingon culture, which is loved. And this is really it wasn't the first Klingon appearance in the series, but it was the most significant one kind of.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and it really shows how Jadzia has a passion, and it's not so much an appropriation, but an appreciation of Klingon culture. Right. And it really builds her out for that, because it's something where, while her and Kira are having these conversations of, you are not sworn to the oaths and to the obligations that your previous host made. And she's like, Jessica goes, yes, but I feel like this is a part of who I am. Like, this isn't Dax who needs to do it. It's Jadzia who needs to do it. And I feel like it really helps build out her character. And it's, as they had been doing all throughout the season, of really examining what makes a Trill and how those personalities of the symbiote and of the host interplay with one another. And it helps really build out the complexity of her character. Well,
and more interesting still to the point, and there's an episode early in season 4 where a former host of a new host of a Trill symbiote interacts with the Dax symbiote, and they were married in a past life, and it's known as a reassociation, and it was the lesbian kiss in 1995. It was more than people could handle. But it's funny because that really ties back to this, is that Curzon wasn't bound by Trill society. She was almost really forbidden for taking part of this, but her Trill societal norms and the Klingon societal norms for which she swore an oath, a blood oath, made her make this choice. So I thought that was fascinating too.
Yes.
So, good stuff. So that does wrap us up for this episode. We will be taking it home to the conclusion of DS9 Season 2. Interestingly enough, that last segment of what we're going to be covering happened after the finale of Star Trek The Next Generation, so it was the only Star Trek on TV for like 3 episodes. It never happened again until until DS9 and Voyager kept lapping over, but whatever. All right, Katie, take us out of here.
All right, for more information about Starfleet International, please visit Grand Petoskey on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter.
My goodness, yes, please do. Friends, as always, thank you for joining us. I have been Charlie Carden at the C3 over on the Twitter. Katie, how do people find you?
You can find me at QTGeek. That is Q_T Geek on Twitter.
I love it. Friends, again, thank you for joining us. I'm telling you, as always, that sharing is caring, and to keep on trekking.
And wherever you go boldly.
This podcast is part of the Secret Friends Unite podcasting network. Visit secretfriendsunite.com for more great shows, articles, news, reviews, and more. Secret Friends Unite podcasts are available on Apple, Google, Spotify, and other podcast services around the world. If you'd like to be part of the conversation, you can join us on Facebook or our new Discord server. or follow at Secret Friends U on Twitter. Please subscribe to Secret Friends Unite on YouTube and visit our merch store at tpublic.com. Just search Secret Friends Unite. Thanks for listening.